Hello, I'm glad to be here. I'm Dr. Winifred Kisitu. I'm not a medical doctor, but I hold a Ph.D. in childhood studies. When I was approached to record something, what came to mind was parenting. I hold, that's something I hold dear, and I've spent a lot of time talking to parents in the diaspora, but also worldwide. Now, three things I would like to talk about today: discipline, our language, and our culture. When it comes to discipline, we tend to discipline the way we were disciplined. When you talk about discipline in the African culture, we are talking about using the stick or screaming. And that's something I carried with me when I came to the UK. My kids were born here, and when it came to correcting them, I used the stick or I slapped them, and I'm not proud of that. I remember my son was 3 years old, and he did something wrong, and I slapped him. Now, before he started crying, he looked at me and said, "Mom, you say you love me. Why do you slap me?" As I said, I am not proud of that, but I didn't know any better. My approach to discipline started when I started writing and reading widely, and I came across positive parenting. I learned that actually we don't need to shout. We don't need to beat or push our kids. We can teach them behavior, in a positive way. And I embraced this approach. And I learned that 99% of the time, it's actually on us, as moms, as dads, to prevent behavior before it even manifests itself. We have to spend 99% of the time teaching our children the behavior they expect. And even when they misbehave, it doesn't mean that we have to jump in with consequences. Sometimes our kids need a reminder, this is the behavior I expect. Sometimes, they need, a warning. If you do this, then this will happen. And as you teach positive discipline, you have to also tell your children about the consequences they'll face. One thing that we get wrong is mixing discipline and punishment. When it comes to discipline, it means loving guidance, guiding our children, teaching our children, discipling our children. As I said, taking the time to teach them right from wrong. Punishment means inflicting pain, both emotionally and psychologically. When we take the time to teach, just like any other thing, maths and English and cooking, when we take the time to teach, our kids learn right from wrong. That's one thing I can testify about. My house was full of fear when my kids were still young, when I was still embracing, punishment. My kids are teenagers now, and I can tell you that they are the most behaved kids because I took the time to teach them. We have a warm relationship, but when I was using punishment, I found that my kids used to fear me. Every time I called them, they came panicking because they didn't know if Mom was going to push them, Mom was going to beat them, Mom was going to shout at them. Let's take the time to teach. Let's take the time to build a positive relationship with our kids. Yes, I know in the diaspora we don't have extended families to help us. And you find that most of the time we punish or we use, we inflict pain emotionally and physically because we are frustrated, because we are tired. And that's the quickest way to discipline. But did you know that when you scream, when you punish, your child is not learning anything? You know, because they're full of fear. They're not thinking straight. And we tend to punish. When you punish your child, you tend to punish them when you're saying, don't do it again. Don't do it again. Sometimes kids don't know why they are being punished. But when you discipline, you are teaching them what they are supposed to do. Yeah? Your child did something wrong. Instead of telling them, don't do it, you tell them what they are supposed to do. So you are equipping them with the skills that they will need to use should they find themselves in that same, situation. Another thing I wanted to talk about was language. And I'm a victim of this. My kids didn't learn our languages. I speak a different language. My husband speaks a different language. When they came here, or when I came here and they gave birth to my kids, we spoke English. Why? Because we speak English in Uganda. We speak English in schools. And one thing why we spoke English was my belief that if I teach my kids my language or my husband's language, they will fall back in school. Now that is wrong, because our mother tongues actually form a base for a second language, for a child to learn a second language. And also, our kids learning our mother tongue, it actually boosts their pride. I took my kids to Uganda. They can hear, they learned a few words, but they could not interact with their grandparents. Their cousins here speak English, but some of the elderly do not speak English. I felt ashamed. I'm trying to undo this. It's hard grafting, but I'm sure I'll get there. So my appeal to you who still have young kids, please teach your children their, your mother tongue. Did you know that Spanish, English, Portuguese, these languages are taught in Africa, or were introduced in Africa, not for our own good, but for a different purpose. First and foremost, these people who came to our country, or who took over our countries many years ago, thought that we could not think in our mother tongue. Our languages were inferior. That's why they did introduce these languages. Another thing is, they introduced these languages because they wanted to create unity. For communities and countries to communicate in certain languages so that there is unity between people and between countries. And then us, parents, African parents, we embraced it, not in the eyes of the conquerors, the European conquerors, but we thought, or we think, that speaking a foreign language, speaking English, is a ticket to, a ticket or an entrance to a higher class, or higher society, or, an elite group of people. Now, we struggle in diaspora, but many parents are teaching their children English as I speak in Uganda. Many parents struggle, many kids struggle like my kids when I take them to Uganda. And these kids have grown up in Uganda. But why? Because, not just Uganda, but in Africa, because we see English as a route to higher status, that elite group. We forget that teaching our kids our languages or mother tongue, helps to raise their self-esteem, helps them to have that belonging. So please, I appeal to you. I made a mistake. I do not want you to make that mistake too. Please try as much as possible to teach your child your mother tongue. The last thing is about our culture. Many kids have grown up here. Our kids have grown up here. You know, it's so expensive to take them to back home. Some kids have not been to Africa. You know, they come and ask so many questions, especially when their countries are being talked, you know, about, or you sleep on trees and you don't have good roads and this and that. That thing wounds our children. It wounds their self-esteem. We have to teach our family history to our kids. Where did we come from? We were not born in Scotland. Where did we come from? Where did their grandparents come from? We've got to teach our children our culture. We have to try as much as possible to... These kids are living in limbo. We have to take them as much as possible to visit our homeland. Yes, they were born in Scotland. They are Scottish. But we came from somewhere, and these kids have to know. Please, as parents, let's take the time to teach our kids our family history. As I said, where we came from. And it doesn't have to be rosy. You know, teach them. Were there divorces in your family? Were there suicides? You know? Were there bankruptcies? These are not bad things to talk about. Actually, we are teaching our kids something. We are teaching our kids resilience. Yes, things sometimes do not go according to plan, but you can make it. So as we teach our family history, let's teach our kids about the good and the bad. And also, let's try as much as possible to take our kids to where we came from. This will help our kids to have that sense of belonging. When someone teases them, not from Scotland. Yes, my kids have experienced that. My daughter, when people ask her, where are you from? The only place she knows is Scotland. But thank God we have tried as much as possible to take them to Uganda. We try as much as possible to take them to Uganda. So I appeal to you for our kids' psychological, mental well-being. Let's teach our children our culture, and let's try as much as possible to take them home so that they know where they came from. This is good for their mental health. This boosts their pride. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you.